Imagine an army of 185,000 strong, one of the most powerful forces in the ancient world. They set up camp, confident they would conquer their enemy by morning. But when the sun rose, something terrifying had happened. The entire army was dead. No battle, no signs of struggle, just silence. Who or what was responsible for this? Was it an act of God, a supernatural force, or could there be another explanation? This event is recorded in the Bible, and it has puzzled historians, theologians, and believers for centuries. The Bible says that an angel of the Lord came down and struck the army in a single night. But who was this angel? Was it the angel of death, the same one who brought plagues upon Egypt? Was it the powerful Archangel Michael? Or was it something beyond human understanding? In this video, we will explore the story behind this incredible event. We'll look at the historical background, why this army was there in the first place. We'll examine the different theories about what really happened that night. And we'll dive into what this moment means for history, faith, and those who believe in divine intervention. Stay with us as we uncover the mystery of the angel of death that killed 185,000 soldiers in a single night. Our story takes place in the year 701 BC, a time when the Assyrian Empire was the most powerful force in the world. The Assyrians were fierce warriors, known for their brutal conquests and mighty armies. They had already conquered many nations, and now they set their sights on the kingdom of Judah, ruled by King Hezekiah. At this time, the king of Assyria was Sennacherib. He had already defeated many cities in Judah, destroying them and taking the people as captives. Now, he was marching toward Jerusalem, the capital of Judah. Hezekiah and his people were terrified. They knew they were no match for the Assyrian army. Sennacherib's forces surrounded Jerusalem, cutting off food and supplies. This strategy, called a siege, was meant to weaken the city until its people surrendered. To make things worse, Sennacherib sent a message to Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem, mocking them. He told them that their God could not save them, just like the gods of other nations had failed to protect them. He wanted them to lose hope and surrender without a fight. But King Hezekiah refused to give up. Instead of surrendering, he did something unexpected. He prayed. He went to the temple of God and cried out for help. He sent messengers to the prophet Isaiah, asking what he should do. Isaiah brought back a message from God. "Do not be afraid. The Assyrians will not enter this city. God himself will protect Jerusalem." This must have been hard to believe. The Assyrian army was the strongest in the world, and they were right outside the city gates. But Hezekiah chose to trust in God's promise. What happened next was something no one could have expected. In a single night, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers were wiped out. The army that had seemed unstoppable was now gone. Jerusalem was saved, without a single battle. But who or what was responsible for this? The Bible tells us that something incredible happened that night. 2 Kings 19:35 and Isaiah 37:36 say that an angel of the Lord came down and struck 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. When the survivors woke up in the morning, they saw the camp filled with dead bodies. The mighty Assyrian army, which had seemed unstoppable, was completely destroyed without a single battle. But how did this happen? Was it truly an angel sent by God, or could there be another explanation? Many believers see this as a clear act of divine intervention, God stepping in to protect Jerusalem, just as he had promised King Hezekiah. They believe the angel was a messenger of God, carrying out his will. Some say it was Michael the Archangel, a powerful warrior angel mentioned in the Bible. Others believe it was the angel of death, the same being that brought the 10th plague on Egypt during the time of Moses. However, some historians and scholars suggest different theories. One theory is that a deadly disease or plague spread through the Assyrian camp overnight, killing the soldiers. Others think it could have been an environmental disaster, such as toxic gas, or even a sudden attack by wild animals. Different religions also have their own perspectives. Jewish and Christian traditions believe this was a miracle from God, showing His power and protection over His people. In Islam, the event is also recognized as a sign of God's power, though some interpretations focus more on divine judgment rather than a literal angel. No matter what the cause, the result was the same. Jerusalem was saved, and the Assyrians were forced to retreat. But the mystery of the angel of death still remains. The Bible says that an angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night. But who was this angel? Was it one of God's mighty warriors, or was it God Himself acting in judgment? Some believe this angel was Michael the Archangel. Michael is known as a powerful warrior angel who fights for God's people. In the book of Daniel, Michael is described as protecting Israel from its enemies. Since this event was about saving Jerusalem, it makes sense that Michael could have been the one sent by God to destroy the Assyrian army. Others believe this was the angel of the Lord, a special messenger of God. In several places in the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord speaks and acts as if he is God Himself. Some Christian scholars believe that this angel might be a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ, meaning Jesus appeared before He was born as a man. If this is true, then Jesus Himself could have been the one who struck down the Assyrian army. Another possibility is that this was not an angel at all, but God acting directly in judgment. Throughout the Bible, there are times when God Himself brings destruction, such as the great flood in Noah's time, or the plagues in Egypt. Some believe that the angel in this story was simply a way of describing God's power at work. No matter which view is correct, the message is clear. Jerusalem was saved, and the Assyrians were stopped by a force far greater than any army on earth. The destruction of 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in a single night is an event that has puzzled many. While the Bible clearly describes the role of an angel sent by God, there are different theories and explanations about what really happened. Let's explore some of the supernatural views and scientific theories behind this mysterious event. The most common belief, especially among believers, is that this was an act of divine punishment. The Assyrians were known for their cruelty and pride. King Sennacherib mocked the God of Israel, saying that the gods of other nations had failed to protect them, so their God could not protect Judah. Many people believe that God decided to punish the Assyrian army for their arrogance and disrespect. The angel of the Lord then struck down 185,000 soldiers as a sign of God's power and a warning against defying Him. This explanation sees the event as part of divine judgment, God's response to the Assyrians' pride and wickedness. For those who believe in the Bible's message, it is a clear reminder that God is in control of history, and He acts when people turn away from Him. While the supernatural explanation is widely accepted, there are also several scientific and historical theories that try to explain what happened that night. These theories suggest that natural events might have led to the destruction of the Assyrian army. One of the most widely discussed scientific theories is the idea that a disease or plague wiped out the Assyrian soldiers. Some historians and scientists believe that the soldiers could have been struck by a viral outbreak, such as the bubonic plague. In ancient times, diseases spread quickly and often wiped out entire armies. Plague could have spread through the Assyrian camp due to the close living conditions, poor hygiene, and the stress of the siege. This theory suggests that the soldiers, weakened by illness, could not defend themselves, and the Assyrian army was overwhelmed by the disease overnight. Another theory is that psychological warfare played a role in the Assyrian defeat. King Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem prayed to God, and this act of faith may have inspired fear in the Assyrian soldiers. The Assyrians were known for their brutal tactics, and the idea that their enemies had divine support could have caused panic. Soldiers might have been overwhelmed by fear, leading to mass hysteria or even violence among their ranks. Some believe that the psychological impact of hearing about the God of Israel protecting Jerusalem could have caused chaos within the Assyrian camp. This panic could have led to mistakes, injuries, or deaths. Another theory points to an environmental disaster. Some suggest that a sudden toxic gas could have been released in the Assyrian camp, either naturally or from some kind of volcanic activity. The area around Jerusalem had volcanic activity, and poisonous gases or fumes could have caused a deadly effect on the soldiers. Others speculate that a storm or earthquake might have struck the Assyrian camp, causing massive destruction and the death of many soldiers. However, there is no direct evidence to support this theory. After the 185,000 Assyrian soldiers were struck down in one night, the Assyrian army was left in complete chaos. The surviving soldiers were terrified and confused. With their forces decimated, King Sennacherib had no choice but to retreat from Jerusalem in humiliation. He had failed in his mission to conquer the city and was forced to go back to Assyria without achieving his goal. This unexpected defeat marked a huge turning point in history. The retreat of the Assyrians was a powerful reminder that no matter how strong an army might seem, it is powerless against God's will. Sennacherib's defeat was not just a military loss. It was a humiliating failure that destroyed the Assyrian king's reputation. He had boasted about his power and victory over other nations, but this event proved that even the mightiest kings cannot challenge the power of God. But the story of Sennacherib doesn't end there. In an ironic twist, just as the prophet Isaiah had foretold, Sennacherib's own sons assassinated him. This was the fulfillment of God's prophecy that Sennacherib would not die by the sword of his enemies. Instead, his own flesh and blood killed him while he was worshiping in the temple of his God in Nineveh. This event had lasting effects on the survival of Jerusalem and the history of the Bible. It showed that God's protection was powerful enough to save the city of Jerusalem from the might of the Assyrian Empire. The defeat of the Assyrians also strengthened the faith of the people in Judah and proved that their God was faithful to protect them in times of crisis. This event became an important part of biblical history, demonstrating the power of God to deliver his people against all odds. The story of the Assyrian army's defeat teaches us some powerful lessons about divine intervention and the power of faith. This event shows that God's hand can intervene in history in ways that are beyond human understanding. Despite the Assyrians being one of the strongest armies at the time, God's power was enough to stop them without any battle. This reminds us that no matter how powerful our challenges may seem, they are nothing compared to the strength of divine intervention. This event also teaches us about the power of faith in times of crisis. When King Hezekiah faced the Assyrian threat, he did not turn to his army or military strategies. Instead, he turned to prayer and trusted in God's protection. Hezekiah's faith in God's promises helped him stay strong, even when it seemed like all hope was lost. This shows that when we face difficulties or danger, faith can be our greatest strength. Believing that we are not alone, and that there is a higher power watching over us, can give us the courage to face even the toughest situations. Finally, the theme of divine intervention and the importance of faith appears not only in the Bible, but also in many other religious and historical stories. For example, in Islam, similar themes are seen when God protects his people from enemies. Judaism and Christianity share stories of God's miraculous acts of deliverance, like the parting of the Red Sea and the fall of Jericho's walls. These stories are meant to show that faith in God can bring victory, even when the odds seem impossible. In the end, the story of the Assyrian defeat reminds us of the power of faith, prayer, and the belief that God is always in control of history. So what do you think? Was the defeat of the Assyrian army truly divine intervention? Or could it have been a natural disaster or something else entirely? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this incredible event. Comment below and let us know what you think happened that night. Don't forget to like this video if you found it interesting, and subscribe so you never miss out on our future content. And if you're fascinated by this story, you won't want to miss our next video. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the world of biblical angels and explore their incredible role in history. You might be surprised by what we uncover next.